Hello there. This very short video is meant to show you some tools that can help you look for different companies to help build a company list. So I'm going to show you three tools. I'm going to kind of show it from most to least relevant. Mattermark is killer. We have a paid subscription to this service. You can all use my login, which I'll send around. The way that you use this tool. So right now, it's got 233,000 companies. We want to pare that down. So the first filter we'd want to put on is just being in the Bay Area. And now it will be filtered based on your interest. So there's two main ways to filter in addition to location. That's the stage of the company, is it early or late stage, and it's also the vertical in which it's in. So let's say for this example that we're looking for some interesting ed tech companies. By vertical, I'd come in here and I'd look at education. So I've now selected this filter. So now we've shrunk the pool down from, I think it was 5 or 10,000 to 600. And within that, we might say, you know, I'm sort of stage agnostic. I don't really want to filter on stage. I'm kind of open to late or early. So at this point, you'd say, well, 605 companies is not helpful because it's too many companies to wade through. So you might want to look by investors. So for example, you could say, well, let me just first take a look at Andreessen Horowitz companies because Andreessen Horowitz invests in great companies. So you'd say, okay. And now we have seven companies left. So you could click through each of these, learn a little bit more about the company, maybe open up the website. And the goal here is to just make a very quick skim, get 5 or 10 companies that look kind of interesting, drop them into your list and keep going. So Mattermark can be a great tool. You can search across different verticals. So you might say, I'm not wedded to one vertical, but I'm kind of interested in these 1 or 2 or 3 areas. You could say I'm really focused on either a size of the company, smaller or larger, later stage. Or you might want to filter by top investors, and I've provided a list of top investors here in the document for your career dev assignments. So that is one great tool to use. Once you get this data, you can export it using the export tool, and then I would have this list of companies which I could drop into my list. Second tool that could be helpful is AngelList. So AngelList is a platform that has a bunch of information on companies. One way to use this is, again, sort of searching by markets. So this is more market-driven. You could look investor-driven as well. So same thing here. I'm going to say I'm interested in education. Let's say I want to check out some language learning companies. Now to filter, because we have 216, I'm going to use a really simple filtering mechanism, which is just the number of people who are following it. That doesn't necessarily mean that the company is doing great, but it gives a sense. And so I could go through here and just look for followers and look for San Francisco companies. So you could open up a couple of these sites and check out a little bit more about these companies. This is a great way to find some companies you don't necessarily know a ton about and kind of go from there. Again, building out that list, not being overly picky about what you're finding, because remember, you're going to learn during this process. It will be self-revealing. You will discover a lot of companies you didn't know about through reaching out, talking to some of the practitioners at these companies. So one thing I would say is that in an earlier stage company, it's less likely to be, you're less likely to find a practitioner that you'd want to learn from directly. So at a smaller company, you might end up be talking to the CEO or somebody in leadership. At a larger company, you'll be able to find somebody who's just a few years ahead of you in the track you want to be in. So balance those. So Mattermark is the first one, AngelList is the second one, and then a third one, which is, you know, probably the most blunt instrument, but is interesting to just see if you can kind of uncover some companies you haven't heard of. So let's say you go in the education space to a famous company like Coursera. Instead of hitting Coursera, I search for it in the bar up here. You're going to hit similar. And similar is going to pop up a bunch of companies. Now, sometimes the search is great, sometimes it's not. Google and Facebook really not that similar, but Codecademy, Inside Track, Beyond 12, Class Dojo, these are all pretty interesting technology companies that focus on education. So that might surface a few additional options for you. Udacity, certainly. So this is another way to generate a list, again, sort of anchoring off one or two companies that you know of that you're interested in. So a recap, there are a few tools that you can use, Mattermark, AngelList, or LinkedIn being 3 recommended ones. I think Mattermark is probably the most powerful. I would think of filtering first on location, but then on either vertical or stage, and potentially using investors as a 4th filter to make sure that you're looking at quality companies. Again, remember the point of this exercise is to put together a list of 40 companies that seem reasonably interesting, and then start looking to identify practitioners within those companies that you could learn from and that you could reach out to get involved in your professional life. And that's about it.